What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 355 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Earth 2, Volume 2, The Tower of Fate. This collects issues 7 through 12 of the Earth 2 series, as well as material from DC Universe Presents issue 0. This is written by James Robinson with art by Nicola Scott. And this continues to do a lot of setup for this series. And some people would say that by the end of issue 12, if you are still doing setup for this series, that the series is moving way too slow and that you need to actually move on to what is being set up, and you shouldn't still be setting stuff up in the first 12 issues. And ordinarily I would agree, but I really love this series. So even though it is moving at a very slow pace, I still like what is being presented to us here, so I don't mind that it's taking its time getting somewhere. Several times throughout this series we have seen them reference that there is some big catastrophe coming in this series. It's going to be even bigger than the war with Apocalypse that happened in the backstory of this series, and clearly Robinson and Scott are building towards something big, and if they are going to get there at their own pace and it's going to be worth the wait, then I don't mind if it's going to take them 24 or even 36 issues of build-up to get to that. Now, I don't know if they ever actually did get to that. I know that James Robinson left the series shortly after this volume because of some kind of dispute with his bosses at DC Comics. I'm not entirely sure what the reason was behind him leaving. I heard that DC wanted to do a second series set in this Earth 2 timeline, and he didn't like that they wanted someone else to be doing stories in this world that he had helped create. I don't know if that's true, because by the time we did get another series set in this world, that was like way over a year after he had left. So I don't know if that's the reason why he left or not, but a lot of the stuff that they are building up in these first 12 issues of this series, I'm not sure if it ever actually got paid off, because James Robinson did eventually leave. I'm not sure how long Nicola Scott stayed on the series, and I don't know how much of this was from her input as well, or if she was just doing what James Robinson wanted to do. I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, this is introducing more new elements into the series, as well as juggling some of the elements that were introduced in Volume 1. For example, we still have the World Army. They are being led by Commander Khan. He's here, and he has to deal with working with Terry Sloan, who is the genocidal sociopath, as Khan calls him, who has destroyed a big chunk of planet Earth in trying to drive away Apocalypse and their forces, Darkseid and their forces from Apocalypse in the backstory leading up to what's going on here. And we don't get to see a whole lot of Khan or the World Army, for that matter. They are trying to capture the Flash and Green Lantern and then Hawkwoman because I guess they want these guys on their side, and they think they need to kidnap these guys in order to accomplish that. But they don't really do a whole lot in this volume. For that matter, neither does Green Lantern. When last we saw him, he said he didn't need any help from any of these guys. Pretty quickly in this volume, he realizes he is going to need help, because he finds out that the train that exploded, that it killed his almost fiance, he finds out that his almost fiance Sam was actually the target of that explosion, and that it was not him. So he asks Hawkwoman or Hawkgirl, I can't remember if it's Hawkgirl or Hawkwoman here, he asks her for help in investigating Sam's death, and they get a little bit further. They find out that somehow Sam was involved with a train car full of dead parademons. We don't know what that's about, but that's about as much as Green Lantern actually does in this volume. This volume really does do a lot to explore Dr. Fate and his origins here, but it doesn't really do a whole lot with the characters who are already introduced in Volume 1. We do get to see the Flash. He teams up with Dr. Fate here, and we get to see his relationship with his mom, and at first she seems like a really unlikable character, but then later we find out that she believes in Jay while he doesn't even believe in himself, and so that could be a potentially interesting relationship if we get to see that explored more throughout this series. Overall, I don't have much more to say about this. We do get some backstory on Terry Sloan. Whenever he was introduced in Volume 1, we didn't know a whole lot about him. All we knew was that he was responsible for the destruction of Pakistan. We find out a little bit more about what he did in this volume, in the DC Presents issue 0. We find out why he did what he did. He believes that he had a good reason to do it. He does seem to be a sociopath, as Khan calls him. A sociopath, as I understand it, is somebody who doesn't actually feel emotions for other people. They basically don't see other people as actual people. I'm certain that I'm actually kind of dumbing that down a little bit, and I'm probably getting it wrong anyway, but Terry Sloan basically doesn't care that he killed off a whole bunch of humans in order to try and defeat Darkseid and his forces, but he does, in his own twisted way, want to save the planet. And so he's an interesting character, but not necessarily a likable character. We get to see a little bit more with Michael Holt here. He showed up just very briefly in Volume 1. If you were wondering whatever happened to him, if you read Volume 1, he does show up again here, and we get to see some glimpses of what might be in store for Michael in the future. I have not read the New 52 Mr. Terrific book, so I don't know how much of what we saw here plays out in that series, and how much of it is going to play out later on in this series. I know that in future volumes of this series, we are going to get even more characters introduced, so I don't know how much more Michael Holt is going to be doing in this series, but I like getting to see more of him. I really liked him in the Jeff Johns JSA series back in the early 2000s. He's a very different character here than he was there, and he's a very different character here than he was in Future's End, which is another place that I've seen that character used. So he seems to be handled very differently depending on who's writing him, but here he seems like he could be an interesting character, but about half the time that we see him in this book, he's brainwashed by Mr. Terrific, or Terry Sloan, Mr. 8, and so we don't really get to see a whole lot of him as a person. We do a little bit more at the beginning of the book than we do later on. But anyway, this series is still introducing plot points, still setting stuff up, and I'm liking everything that's being given to us so far. We get a brief introduction of Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. They show up in one page here. There's an entire issue here that focuses on Steppenwolf and one of the Furies, and I like the way that that Fury is introduced. She is called Fury, and she is actually Wonder Woman's daughter. So that is a reference to the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earth's Fury, who was Wonder Woman's daughter, and I like that because she is an ally of Steppenwolf, he has brainwashed her, and the Darkseid Fourth World characters, the Furies, they work for Darkseid, so I kind of like how they worked that name in there. I thought that was kind of clever, but there's an entire issue that focuses on them taking over this small country. So this book is moving at a very slow pace, but I like everything that's happening here, so it doesn't bother me that it's moving so slow, but that might bother other people. But those are my thoughts on Earth 2 Volume 2, The Tower of Fate. So far, I'm really digging the series. I hope that you guys are digging these videos, and if you are, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.